When people try to explain monsters, they usually reach for one word: insanity. Because insanity makes things easier to accept. It turns terror into accidents and control into chaos. But this story keeps breaking that explanation, because the man at the center of it didn't just disappear after what he did. He stayed, he watched, he wrote letters, and by the time Japan knew his name, the most important piece was still missing. Was he insane, or was he pretending to be? If you wanted to build the argument that Tsutomu Miyazaki was broken from the beginning, you wouldn't start with the murders. You start with the body. In Itsukaichi, Tokyo, a child was born into a well-off family that on paper looked perfect. Status, security, a respected name. They even ran a regional newspaper. From the outside, it looked stable. But Miyazaki was born prematurely, with a rare condition that caused a fusion of the bones in his forearms, affecting movement and leaving his hands visibly deformed. Kids noticed, kids mocked him, and he learned early what it means to be the person everyone avoids. So he kept it hidden whenever he could, watching the other kids and wishing he could be normal like them. And for a while, he could hide inside school, numbers, grades, routines. Then the numbers turned on him, and the future he pictured, becoming a teacher, started slipping away. He didn't get the path he wanted. Instead, he went to a junior college, studying to become a photography technician. A life behind the lens, and that detail matters. Because photography isn't just a hobby in this story, it becomes a method, a way to control reality by freezing it. Because later, the need to control a moment doesn't stay behind the lens. At home, things weren't safe either, and the isolation wasn't quiet anymore. It was turning into behavior that unsettled the people closest to him. There are accounts that during this period, he hurt and killed animals. Cats, possibly a dog. Not as a one-time outburst, but like testing something. What it feels like to decide what lives and what doesn't. At the age of 20, another obsession begins to surface. Material involving minors, while his depression deepens. He starts talking in ways that suggest he doesn't want to be alive at all. He felt like his parents cared more about status and the family name than about him. But there was one person he felt close to, his grandfather. The one place he didn't feel invisible, where he felt looked after. And when his grandfather died in May 1988, something in Miyazaki finally snapped. Because what happened next doesn't feel like normal grief. In Japan, the body is cremated. What's left is ash. Families may keep it or scatter it as part of a tradition. But Miyazaki didn't treat it like a tradition. He consumed the ashes of his grandfather, not for shock, but like a desperate attempt to keep him inside, to keep the one steady thing in his life from leaving. Soon after, the darkness inside of him started getting revealed. His behavior escalated inside of his home. He was caught watching his sister shower. When confronted, he attacked. Later, his mother scolds him for spending too much time with videotapes, and he attacks her too. Not long after that, he moves out of the family home. So if you're hearing this, the insanity argument feels possible. Loneliness, physical deformity, obsession, violence, a collapse after a death. And whatever was building inside him stops being private. And then a child disappears. August 22nd, 1988. Iruma City, Saitama Prefecture. 4-year-old Mari Kuno is last seen near her home. At first, it looks like one of those disappearances where there is almost nothing to hold on to, until witnesses start describing what they saw. A man with a round face and wavy hair, about 5'6", was last seen with Mary near a black sedan. Then she's gone. This wasn't a sudden frenzy. It wasn't chaos. It was time, steps, decisions. Miyazaki saw the little girl playing next to her home. He leads her to his car, then drives to an isolated area, and without hesitation, he kills her by strangulation. But what made this case spread across Japan wasn't just the disappearance in the news, it was what came after. He dismembered her remains, cremated some of them, and kept other parts. And then he does something that doesn't fit a loss of control at all. He sends her family a package. Inside, bone fragments reduced to powder, teeth, photo of clothing, and a postcard with 5 words: marry, bones, cremated, investigate, prove. That's not just cruelty, that's control. Someone inserting himself into the investigation and into the family's grief. After Mary's mother appears on TV, clinging to hope because the ashes in the box didn't match Mary's DNA, a letter arrives signed with a name that wasn't his: Yuko Imada. The writer responds directly to the broadcast, making one thing clear: there was no reason to hope. Then another letter arrives, describing the body's decomposition. Clinical, invasive, designed to haunt. Then it gets even more invasive, and in some ways worse. The phone rings. When they answer, silence. Dead air. Then a click. Night after night, eventually, the Kono family stops answering, so he lets it ring 20 minutes at a time, and then it stops. Not because police caught him, but because he simply gets bored. And that boredom is terrifying, because the boredom implies satisfaction, like grief was a toy. And if Mary's case was just the beginning, the next one makes it clear it wasn't an accident. October 3rd, 1988, 7-year-old Masami Yoshizawa disappears in the Hano area of Saitama. Roller roads, open spaces, few eyes. It's the kind of place where a car can slow down, offer a ride, and nobody thinks twice. She accepts. Then the story goes quiet. Her body isn't found for nearly a year, which means for a month, there is no scene to read, no clear ending, just waiting. When her remains are finally found, reports suggest she was killed by strangulation. We don't get a clean picture of what happened, but we do get something else: the shape of it. A car, isolation, and control. This wasn't a one-time occurrence. It wasn't a loss of control. It was a process, repeated and refined. And as autumn turned into winter, he didn't stop. On December 12, 1988, 4-year-old Erika Namba disappeared in Kawagoe City, Saitama. A car pulls up, and within seconds, she's forced inside. He keeps driving further away from anyone who might see or hear her, to a secluded spot where he can take photographs and where she can't run. And when it's over, he also kills her by strangulation. But what makes Erika's case a turning point isn't only the crime, it's how close he comes to being caught. Because later, he's driving with her body in the trunk and his car gets stuck. He panics, leaves the car, hides the body in a nearby forest, and then minutes later 2 men walk up. They don't know who he is, they don't know what's going on, they just see a car that needs a push, so they help. They push the car free and he drives away. 2 days later, Erika's body is found. Police ask anyone in the area that day, anyone who saw a car, anything unusual, to come forward. That's when the 2 men reported what happened. But they get one detail wrong: the vehicle description. And that single mistake is enough to let him slip away. After Erika's body is found, her family begins receiving the same kind of psychological control, just as the Kono family. Postcard arrives, reads, Erika, cold, cough, throat, rest, death. Then the phone calls, then silence. And now the pattern is undeniable. This isn't just a murder or impulsivity, it's contact. He wants the families to feel him, which brings us to the last victim. The one that escalates the case into something the public couldn't look away from. 5-year-old Ayako Nomoto is approached by a man. He offers her a ride, promising to take beautiful pictures of her. Not knowing any better, she accepts. She gets into the car. As he drives, he tries to make her feel safe. He talks. He even gave her a piece of gum. And that's when she notices his hand. She comments on them. The kind of innocent question any curious child might ask. Why do your hands look like that? It's a small moment, but to Miyazaki, it hits something deep. He pulls on her gloves and tells her, this is what happened to girls who say things like that. And then he kills her by suffocation. After he brought the body back to his home and kept it there, the smell became a problem. So he tried to adapt, using chemicals, but it didn't really do much. And when he couldn't control it anymore, he started removing parts. Some were left behind in a public toilet in a cemetery, and the rest were buried in the woods. And then the most disturbing detail. Reports say he kept her hands and engaged in acts of post-mortem abuse, including drinking blood, but we won't describe it further. Because the point is, what this shows, when something becomes a problem, he doesn't collapse, he adjusts. That's not a mind that's gone, that's a mind making choices. And still, he isn't caught for murder. After 4 murders, the end doesn't begin with detectives cracking a code. It begins on July 23rd, 1989, with something that looks ordinary. A park, 2 sisters, a camera. Miyazaki walks up to the 2 sisters and asks to take their picture, but he doesn't want to do it there. He wants them to come with him. The older one knows better than to go with a stranger. She tells her younger sister to stay put and not follow him. Then she runs to get their father. Long enough for Miyazaki to pull the younger sister into the nearby bushes and take inappropriate pictures. When their father arrives, he realizes what's going on and attacks him. Officers are already nearby. They move in and arrest him. From there, he is taken into custody. In the interrogation room, detectives try to force him to talk. He starts with small stuff: public urination, shoplifting, violence at home. It's like he's checking what they know and how much he can control the story, hoping it keeps the charges smaller. But detectives don't bite. Then 17 days later, the story changes. The small stuff stops and then Miyazaki finally breaks. And once he does, he starts talking about his crimes. The things he's been avoiding since day one. When they search his home, it gets worse. They find videotapes, thousands of them. A lot are ordinary recordings, but buried among them are tapes Miyazaki made himself. News coverage about the missing girls, parents bleeding on TV, and the footage that ties him directly to the victim. And once that hits the media, the fear spreads fast. Because it isn't just what police are finding. It's the questions. It's the questions people start asking. How can someone blend into everyday's life and still commit crimes like this? And every time it seems like it can't get worse, it does. Inside the house, investigators find human remains, evidence tied directly to Mary and Ayako, and signs that suggest possible cannibalism. He gives them locations, leading investigators to wooded areas where the victims' remains were left. After 2 months with Miyazaki in custody, investigators finally recover remains that belong to Masami and Ayako. And as more details come to light, the fear across Japan only grows. The mystery is over, but the explanation isn't. Because Miyazaki doesn't only confess, he offers a reason. And it's not what anyone expects. Miyazaki doesn't point to a motive, he points to someone else. An alter ego, a figure he named Ratman. Ratman. Ratman made him do it, he says. Ratman was in control. Miyazaki even draws him. The story starts drifting as the explanations grow stranger. From rituals meant to bring his dead grandfather back, to murders reframed not as harm but as kindness. So, what is this? There are only two terrifying possibilities here. Either he's deeply disturbed, or he's really strategic. Because Ratman shows up at the exact moment responsibility begins. And that's the real question. Is this insanity or a shield? Because once Ratman enters the story, there's only one question left. Was Miyazaki out of control, or trying to look like he was? The question doesn't get solved in an interrogation room. It gets argued in court. The trial begins on March 30, 1990. And from the start, the defense builds everything around one claim: mental illness. Psychiatrists don't agree with each other. Each evaluation points in a different direction, from schizophrenia to dissociative identity disorder to severe personality disorder. Even the experts can't settle on a single explanation. And that uncertainty gives Ratman room to exist. In court, Miyazaki doesn't look like someone losing control. He's calm, detached, sometimes even emotionless. He isn't pleading for forgiveness. He's trying to push responsibility somewhere else. Years pass. Then April 14, 1997, the Tokyo District Court delivered its answer. Guilty, sentenced to death. The court rules he understood what he was doing. He appeals multiple times, and each time the verdict holds. In 2001, the Tokyo High Court reviews the case and stands by the sentence. Years later, in 2006, Supreme Court affirms it, bringing the legal fight to an end. The court acknowledged mental illness, but reject legal insanity. Because what the evidence shows isn't a mind slipping away from reality. It shows planning, adaptation, control. Tsutomu Miyazaki was executed on June 17, 2008. But his execution didn't settle the question that haunted the country. Because insanity is a word Japan reaches for when they need an explanation, and Miyazaki gave them one that sounded like it fit. Ratman. So here's what we can say, without romanticizing him, and without pretending we have answers we don't. Miyazaki may have been deeply disordered. A mind shaped by isolation, obsession, and fantasies he couldn't control. But there are moments that matter. He timed letters to television broadcasts. He harassed families for months. He stopped when he got bored. He hid evidence, moved it, returned to the scenes. Those aren't the actions of someone who doesn't understand what they are doing. They are actions of someone who does. This is why even decades later, the case still haunts the country. Not just because of the murders, but because of the idea that someone could do this and then sit at home watching the fear spread on television. In the end, the chapter did close. The crimes, the trials, the appeals. It ended with a rope inside a Tokyo prison. But the terror Miyazaki left behind never really did.